Hey everybody, welcome to another lesson of learning Japanese. Today, of course, we're going to be covering another grammar pattern, and the grammar pattern that we're going to cover, or rather start to cover today, are the multiple grammar patterns that are formed from using the word wake. So the Japanese word wake is a very common word, and it is also very extensive in that it is going to be a part of a lot of grammar patterns, up to 5. And so we're going to start covering it in this video, and this is going to span multiple lessons, and it's going to equate to 4 or 6 separate lessons on various grammar patterns or meanings of wake. So this video here is going to serve as the foundation of our series of videos covering wake, and in this one particularly what we're going to cover is basically just the simplest form of wake, and that's just something wakeda to mean multiple things actually. So just first up, let's define the word that is wake. Wake is going to translate to multiple things. It's going to translate to reason, conclusion based on context, cause, judgment derived from reasoning, etc. And so the thing that we need to note here right from the start is that some of these definitions could be said to be the opposite of each other. Specifically, the first one that we stated, reason, is going to be opposite of basically the second one that we stated, which was conclusion based on context. When you have a reason and you have a conclusion, those two things are usually the opposite. The reason is going to be the thing that led to the conclusion. So in a sentence where you're explaining the reason for something, those two things would be on the opposite ends of the spectrum. However, the word wake is somehow going to mean both of them depending on the context. And it's basically going to be this dynamic here that's going to mark the complexity of the word wake, as well as the multiple grammar patterns that are going to be based upon it. So like I said in this video, what we're just going to do is we're going to cover wake in its simplest form, and that's kind of just using it as a standalone word. You could also kind of interpret it as a grammar pattern, but yeah, we might call it either or, so hopefully that won't be confusing. But we're going to use wake in just basically a positive statement, a simple positive statement, something wakeda, and this is going to have two meanings because, like I just said, we kind of have two categories of definitions for wake, a reason and a conclusion. So as you might expect, these two meanings for just using something wakeda is going to mean this is the reason or this is the conclusion. So in Japanese, when we want to say reason, usually the most commonly used word for reason is going to be ryu, which of course means reason. And wake is going to be very comparable to this word, and in many cases it's going to be interchangeable because it also has that definition of reason. So just to give a few examples, the phrase ryu monaku means without reason. We could interchange ryu with wake, and that could be wake monaku, and this would also translate to without reason. Wake o hanasu is a phrase that means to state one's reason or to tell one's story. This is wake serving as the definition reason or ryu. Another common phrase is doyu wake ka, and this is going to translate to for what reason or why did you do this? What's the reason? And here, of course, wake is going to mean reason. So while there are a decent amount of common phrases, I guess you would say, that use wake to mean reason, this is actually going to be the definition that is less occurring. Usually when we use wake, it's going to mean the other definition, the conclusion of something or the result or a situation as a result of something. And so it's this definition where we're going to start treating it more like a grammar pattern now. So I'll go through some construction, some context information, and then some example sentences now. Okay, so first up what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the construction of this grammar pattern. So we can use this grammar pattern with basically anything. We can use it with verbs, adjectives, nouns, clauses, and yeah, everything will pretty much work. When we're using it with a verb, it just has to be in its plain form basically. When we're using it with adjectives and it's an e adjective, we just use the e adjective, basically the stem word, and then we place wakeda right after it. When we're using it with a na adjective or a noun, we're going to need to place a particle right after the word between the word and wakeda. That's either going to be the particle na or basically data if you're in the past tense. And last thing to note is that actually for all the kinds of words, we can actually place the phrasing toyu in between the word and the wakeda phrasing. However, we're not going to go into that right away because toyu wakeda is actually something that could be considered a separate grammar pattern in and of itself. So we're going to cover that after we cover this grammar pattern to avoid confusing, even though this is plenty confusing already. And a key thing to note here is that wake not only expresses a conclusion or a result or a situation, but it's a conclusion, result, or situation based upon context, information that has been established. So in line with that, all of the example sentences that we're going to feature are going to be either 2 sentences long because the first sentence will establish some context information and then the second sentence will talk about the conclusion or the result that came from it, or we'll have one sentence with basically two clauses to do the same thing. So the grammar pattern that is something something wakeda, in which we're interpreting wake as the definition of a conclusion based upon context or result or a situation based upon context, is going to have the many translations of for that reason blank, or as you'd expect blank, or no wonder blank, or that's why blank, this means blank, as a result blank, based on this blank, essentially blank, basically blank, naturally blank, etc. So yeah, those are a lot of different choices to choose for a translation, and a lot of them are similar in a sense, and a lot of them are pretty different in a sense. So in short, context is very important here. And the reason behind this is, even though we give it a straightforward function of just expressing the conclusion or the result or a situation, there are actually a lot of nuanced intentions behind expressing something like that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to provide one example sentence for each of these common intentions behind using wakeda. So for example, very common reasons for using this grammar pattern are one, making a logical conclusion based on established information. And this is probably the pretty objective function that you connected this grammar pattern with. It's something similar to just saying, because of this, this happened. Kara or node are grammar patterns that are very similar to that. So for an example sentence of this, making just a logical, pretty much objective conclusion from established information, let's say, ame ga futte ita, michi ga nurete iru wake da. And so this two-sentence line right here is going to translate to, it has been raining, that's why the road's wet. So let's break down the sentence bit by bit just to get a feel of how this is working, how this is a logical conclusion. So our first sentence is going to start off with the word ame, which is going to mean rain. We have the ga particle marking rain as the subject of the sentence. Then we have the verb action. Furu means to fall or to rain. It's used with rain. It's in its te form. So futte. Then we add ita to mean was raining as opposed to is raining. And that's the first sentence. It was raining, or it has been raining. Now we're going to move on to the second sentence. And like I said earlier, the second sentence is going to state the conclusion or the result, and we're going to use the grammar pattern wakeda. So first up we have the word michi, which is going to translate to road, path, way. It is also going to be marked as the subject now with the particle ga, and then we have our verb phrasing, nurete iru, and this is just going to mean is wet. And so iru is a plain form verb, so if we want to use the grammar pattern, we need a plain form verb, and we do have one, so we can just plug in wakeda now, and that's exactly what we do. So nurete iru wakeda is just basically going to translate to that's why it's wet. So altogether, once again, ame ga futte ita, michi ga furete iru wake da. This is a very objective sentence. It has been raining, that's why the road is wet. Or as you'd expect, the road is wet. You're making an objective observation, and then you just make a deduction from that. For the second common intention behind using this grammar pattern, we have a kind of more nuanced expression in which we're going to express that we understand something by making a conclusion from the established information. So if we compared that to the example that we just did, or the logical conclusion, that doesn't really have the nuance of you wanting to show that you understand something. Why would you want to show that you understand roads get wet when it rains? That's a logical thing. It's an objective thing. You don't really have to express that you understand it to show someone else that you understand what they're talking about. So on the other hand, now we'll exhibit an example sentence where you do something like that. When you're talking to someone and you want to express that you understand what they just said. So this example is going to be a two-sentence line. Worth noting is that the first sentence is going to be spoken by someone, and the second one is going to be spoken by someone else. So it's a conversation, not just a person saying two things. So for the first sentence we have, 彼はまだ14歳なのに大学レベルの授業を取っている. This sentence right here is going to translate to, even though he's only 14 years old, he's taking university level courses. And now for our second sentence, which is going to use the grammar pattern wakeda, it's going to be the short and simple, つまり天才なわけだ. And this here is just going to translate to, so basically he's a genius, or so essentially he's a genius. So before we go into explaining the whole expression of understanding, let's just break down the sentence word by word so we make sure we know what's going on here grammatically with all the words. So the first sentence, we start off with the word kare, which means he or him. We have the particle wa, marking him as the topic of the sentence. We have mada, which is a particle that means still. This is going to be modifying the age, 14 years old. 14 歳, that's going to be 14 years old, so still 14 years old. Mada 14 yonsai. Then we're going to use the grammar pattern that is the no ni grammar pattern. It's basically a conjunction that translates to even though. It is being used here with a noun, 14歳, to mean 14 years old. So we need the particle na right after the noun. And now we can move on to the second clause of the sentence, which is 大学レベルの授業を取っている. Daigaku is going to mean university or college. It is going to be kind of being used as a compound noun here with the word reberu, and this is going to mean daigaku level or university level. This kind of compound noun here is in turn going to be used in a noun of a noun modification, acting as the first noun, and the second noun is jugyo, which is going to translate to courses or classes. So daigaku leberu no jugyo is going to mean university level courses or classes. Now we're going to mark that as the direct object to the verb action that's about to come. So we have the direct object marker O, then we have a verb action, which is going to be toru, which means to take. It has a lot of definitions, but here it means to take the classes, but it's going to be in its te form plus iru to mean is doing that verb, so is taking, because he's still taking it, and yeah, that ends the sentence right there. So 彼はまだ14歳なのに大学レベルの授業を取っている is going to mean even though he's still 14 years old, he's taking university level courses. So that sentence right there is going to be the contextual information that has been established. He's 14 years old and he's taking university level classes. Now in our second sentence, the person talking there is going to make a conclusion to express that he understands the information that was just told to him. And to do that, he's going to make a conclusion. And so the conclusion is sumari tensai na wake da, to mean, so basically he's a genius. In this sentence, we start off with the word sumari, which is a common word which just means in short, or basically it's a thing to summarize what was just said. Right after that, we have the word tensai, which is going to translate to genius. This is going to be a noun, and we're going to use it with the grammar pattern now, so we need to add the particle na. Then we have wakeda, and that's going to end the sentence. So we're going to pull the definition of wakeda that is most appropriate to this context, and that's going to be something along the lines of basically or essentially. And yeah, so essentially he's a genius, or basically he's a genius. So that was an example of the usage of wakeda to kind of express that you understand something, to express that you acknowledge something that was established, the information that was established. And so yeah, in cases where we're doing that, the word sumari is actually going to show up a lot because its function of basically summing up what was just said is very conceptually aligning with what we're doing here with wake. For our number 3 common usage or intention behind using the grammar pattern that is wakeda, we have something that is pretty similar to the second one, but I think it is different enough, slightly different enough to qualify its own category, just so we know. Number 3 is when we're restating information, but from a different angle. So for our example sentence for this, again, we're going to have a conversation. One person talking, and then another person saying something else. For our first sentence, we have 彼女は5年間日本に住んでいました. This is going to translate to she had been living in Japan for 5 years. And now for our second sentence, which will be a response to this using the grammar pattern wake, we have そうか、つまり日本語がとても上手なわけですね. And so this right here will translate to something along the lines of, oh, is that so? So then naturally she must be really good at Japanese. So let's break down these two sentences to get a feel of what's going on here. First up, we have 彼女, that just mean her or that girl or she. We have the particle wa to mark her as the topic of the sentence. We have the time marker go nenkan, which is going to mean a period of 5 years basically. Go, which means 5. Nen, which means years. And kan just means interval or period. So 5-year interval, 5-year period. After that, we have the word nihon, which means Japan. We have the particle ni to mark the location Japan. Then this is going to be modifying the basically verb action, which is to live, sumu, which means to live, and it's going to mean its te form sunde plus imashita, which is the polite past form of iru. So this sunde iru is going to mean is living. This is going to then mean was living. So then 彼女は5年間日本に住んでいました is going to be she had been living in Japan for 5 years, or she lived in Japan for 5 years. And now in response to this, the addressee says,そうか. Oh, is that so? We have the word sumari again to mean basically, or in short, or yeah, something along those lines. Nihongo, which is going to translate to Japanese. We have the particle ga now because this is the particle that is used with jozu, which means good, but before jozu shows up, we have totomo, the adverb that means really, to modify it. So totomo jozu is going to mean really good, and jozu is going to be a na adjective, and we want to use the grammar pattern now, so we need to add the particle na. So jozu na wake da. But instead of da, we're going to be polite, and we have desu, and then we have ne, because we just want to end the sentence with that kind of nuance. So, jozu na wake desu ne. Combine that with the whole rest of the sentence. So ka, sumari nihongo ga totemo jozu na wake desu ne, which is going to translate to, is that so? Then naturally she must be really good at Japanese then, huh? And so yeah, hopefully you can see how we have labeled this the intention of restating an information, but approaching it from a different angle. The first person expressed that this girl has been living in Japan for 5 years, and then the person who responded approaches that kind of same statement. It says that again, but from a different angle. If she lived in Japan for 5 years, then it is very likely that she's pretty competent at the Japanese language. So they kind of restate it, but from that different angle. And so with that, we've covered a decent amount of example sentences already with just the simple form of wake, its simplest grammar pattern. So I think to avoid making this video too long, we're gonna cut this first coverage or first part of the coverage here. In our follow-up lesson, we'll go into that thing I hinted at earlier in which we plug in という訳だ instead of 訳だ and how that will slightly differ. Then onwards, we'll go into the bunch of more grammar patterns that use wake, 訳ではない, 訳がない, 訳には行かない, and some more. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoyed your time doing so. If you'd like to express that, you can like the video, leave a comment below, or subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like to support more of these video lessons, or support more of these video lessons being created more often, or support more types of videos, please do consider checking out our Patreon page and consider becoming a patron there. Also included on the screen right now are, of course, a bunch of links on where to find and follow us elsewhere online, including our official website. And lastly, check out our Discord server. We've got a community of hundreds of people learning Japanese just there. So if you're looking for somebody to voice chat with just to practice speaking Japanese, or you have a quick question that needs a quick answer, or if you just want to talk about anime or music or manga or other Japanese things, learn Japanese.becauseofdreams.com/Discord. And with that, see you next time.